Hey, Adam.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Saratoga podcast, everybody. It's a little muggy
Yeah,
out there today.
yeah. It's been a hot summer, boy. You get a little
Mm,
rain involved, and it gets sticky. But
it has been a hot summer.
it's
So
also
it's
been a
just,
hot summer in politics, in local politics, which is
it has
always
been.
good for the show.
It's just Adam and I today. Dan is not with us today. He's been busy with his real life, real job. So we miss you, Dan. But Adam, I'm pumped that you're here to talk all things politics as per usual.
Yeah, let's talk DPW. We've talked about this before, but
Good idea.
again, Commissioner Golub is stepping down, and he's making a very interesting decision. And we've talked about this before about when he's the timing of it, because
Right.
if he would have stepped down before August 5th, I believe, then it would go to the ballot, and there would be an election next November on the national election when we voted for president. But he's stated he's stepping down, I think, August 12th or about that time, which means that there will be a DW appointee, as the banner says. And what makes this interesting is you have two Democrats, and Commissioner Shangvi and Commissioner Moran, Republican in Mayor Safford, and Commissioner Cole, who, while he's a registered Democrat, tends to caucus and vote with Safford and the Republicans. So what do you think, Robin? What are you hearing? What are your sources telling you?
So just for like a little bit of background for people who aren't totally caught up on this, Commissioner Jason Golub, who's the acting DPW commissioner, received an appointment from the governor to be the general counsel for the Department of Corrections. So, which is a really exciting opportunity for him. He can't do both things at once, though. So he is leaving. I believe he stated his departure date was going to be on August 16th because he starts his new job on August 18th. But the controversy kind of here that Adam mentioned is that New York state law says that you have to, he would have had to resign before August 5th for there to be enough time to get names on the ballot for this November, for there to be an election. And of course, if that did happen, there wouldn't be time for a third party line of any kind. It would really just be like a straight Republican versus Democrat election. If he resigns after August 5th, there is not enough time to have a general election this November to replace him. And so there would be an appointee that would be appointed by the current council. But the confusion here is that our charter says an appointee could only serve out the remainder of the calendar year. So I don't know how those things are going to like work together. Like we may have a special election in like the winter. I have no idea. But the point is, right now we are kind of waiting and watching to see how the city council is going to handle making this appointment. What they talked about in the past was putting together a committee who would then make a recommendation to the council on who they think should be the appointee, and then the council would vote. But as you just pointed out, we've got a likely 2 versus 2 situation. And so it's we've heard some names being tossed around, but we really need a consensus candidate here. Otherwise that position is going to go unfilled, until they can come to an agreement. And I don't think that would be a good thing at all.
Yeah, it's going to be real hard to figure out, again, who that person is, because you have two essentially, again, Tim Cole, not a Republican. For sake of the show, we'll just call him Republican, just to make it easy and concise. We have two Republicans who essentially now have more power than they did before, because now at least they can filibuster things, and they can pause votes, and they can not get things passed that they don't want to pass. They necessarily can't get things passed they want passed. But before, when they were on the minority, and it didn't actually happen often, they did vote, most votes are 5-0, but now the mayor and Commissioner Cole, I think, aren't going to be in a hurry to appoint somebody to that position. On the flip side, you disagree, but on the flip side, you have some Democrats who are very entrenched.
I feel like that would be irresponsible, just in that, like, you need someone running the department, and it would be like unfair to DPW as a department and disruptive for them to not have anyone in that position. So hopefully, I mean, it's in everyone's best interest for that position to be filled, I think, in general, just,
Yes, it is. I guess my point is that I don't think the mayor is going to feel pressured into voting for somebody he doesn't think is appropriate for that job.
Totally. Totally.
And so but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I know what you're saying. I have to say, I can see this being drawn out for a while for them not being able to agree on a certain candidate. But that is just based on my poof out of the sky idea. That's not anything I'm hearing, but I can just see you have some very some strong characters and opinions on the city council that are going to have to a rock in an immovable force and a unstoppable force and a movable object kind of scenario as I see it.
Well, I also want to mention, I had tossed around a couple names that I had heard being discussed in terms of a possible appointee or people who are, interested or who would be interested, being appointed to this position. And one of the people I had mentioned was Chuck Marshall, who is the chair of the planning board right now. And I just wanted to clarify, because I think when I was talking about it, I made mention of people who have political baggage not being ideal. And I just wanted to clarify that I don't think Chuck Marshall has any political baggage. He just has been on the periphery of politics, in many, ways, shapes, and forms, but not that he has political baggage. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that point from the last podcast. But the names that I'm hearing still from the Democrats, has been Gordon Boyd, who's really the most interested in this position and would like to be appointed. And I believe is interviewing with the Democrats, which is also kind of a confusing element here. The Democratic City Committee put out a release saying that they were interviewing candidates who would be interested in this appointment, and they should send their resumes to the committee if they wanted to be considered. I think they had a due date of like this past Friday or this past Monday for people to submit their resumes and their intent, but they were only going to interview registered Democrats. So it wasn't like they were casting the widest net possible. And so I don't know ultimately who is going to be interviewing with them, but I don't know how that's going to correlate to a committee that the city council puts together. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I know exactly what you mean. It is kind of a Saratoga Springs Democrat move. It's a little arrogant. This is not for the Democrat Party to decide. The candidates were elected by the people and that's how our charter's written. The charter doesn't say bring in the committees to decide who gets this appointment. It's a little what you saw on the national scene there with the current Democratic. No, I was going to say with Kamala Harris and how it was really the committee who it wasn't really a democratic process that got put her there. The analogy's not perfect, but the idea that this is not for the party to decide, and it shouldn't be a party issue. And if it is a party issue, it kind of supports my theory of that seat might sit empty for a while if they're only going to interview and then push forward candidates who are registered Democrats, because that's not a consensus candidate. That's not a middle of the road independent candidate who is what's needed to fill that role as I see it.
Right. And what's so disappointing to me, just generally speaking, is that I really felt like as a city, we had gotten away from partisanship on the city council because the issues that face Saratoga aren't explicitly partisan. And so it never made sense to me that we would have like Republican voting blocks or Democratic voting blocks, or that, partisanship would play such a huge role in an appointment. And it continues to be disappointing to me because I just would hope that the city council or the people who sit on this committee that they appoint would be open-minded enough such that if someone walked in, no matter what party they were affiliated with, if they were really qualified, had a great interview, and it seemed like they would do a great job for the city, be open-minded to that. Don't write them off the second they're walking in the door because of their party affiliation. So, I'm not super hopeful about how this is going to play out, but I think the city council has discussed that they would each appoint someone to a committee, and then maybe Jason Golub would also be on the committee to interview people. And then that committee would make the recommendation to the 4 people on the council, I think. But you're right. They don't seem to be in a rush to be doing anything. And I
think part of the problem too is they really can't do anything until Commissioner Golub actually does resign.
Well,
right?
they could formalize the process of how they're going to replace him.
Yeah, and you're right. And I guess we'll see, because there really hasn't been a city council meeting since he did
Right.
this, since he
So
said
I
this.
was just,
So
just
next
looking at the
Tuesday we'll see.
calendar. There's only one city council meeting on August 6th before he will resign. So presumably they'll figure out how they're going to do this at that meeting, I guess.
Yeah, we'll see.
Anyway, speaking of which, so Dan, Adam, and I were talking, and we have a little idea here, folks, and we want your involvement. We would like to hear from you guys who you think in Saratoga Springs should be on the city council but wouldn't run for the position. Like, who would be your ideal city council person, although you know that they're not interested in running?
So you're the nominating committee out there. You got to appoint somebody. You got to nominate somebody to run for office. Who are you picking, and for what office, and for why?
Exactly. Or you can just submit a name of somebody you think would be good on the city council but would never consider running. And we're going to do a top 5 list of the best Saratogians to be on the city council who won't run. And so we want to hear from you guys. I've got someone already in mind that I've always would love to see on the city council. And if you have any thoughts, you can comment on any of the social feeds and we'll pick it up, or you can email us your submission. But we're going to put together this list because, I think it would actually be really interesting to have that conversation. Like, who would be a great city leader on the council, but doesn't want to have to deal with the politics or, and get that.
Yeah, they're smart enough. They got to be smart if they don't want to run just to start with. So
exactly.
What kind of idiot wants to subject themselves to the rigors of a campaign for $14,000?
Exactly. Exactly. So we wanted to have a little fun with it. So if you've got any ideas or thoughts, email, comment, and probably in September we'll have this list put together and we'll publish it and come out with it. But I know there's people in Saratoga Springs that I would love to run for the city council who I've badgered over the years, but they're hard-nosed and I'm always disappointed. So speaking of hard-nosed, actually, there's really no transition here that makes sense. Another lawsuit just came out in the paper a few days ago against Commissioner Moran and his deputy, Stacey Connors, from a former City Hall employee, Lisa Rebus. And I think this is now the 3rd lawsuit that has been brought against the city, specifically naming Commissioner Moran for wrongful termination, hostile work environment. Marilyn Rivers, who is the previous director of risk and safety, has a lawsuit pending against the city that includes Commissioner Moran. Carrie, I forget her last name, Carrie, who used to be maybe assistant assessor, also filed a lawsuit against Commissioner Moran and the city. And now we have a 3rd one from Lisa Rebus, who, worked for the city for about 19 years and was terminated. And I think it's troubling. I think it's troubling to see this amount of lawsuits brought from former employees. I don't think it's just.
I'll tell you who I blame. You're not going to guess it. I blame the insurance companies for this.
Tell me why.
I'll tell you why. I think the insurance companies have set a standard of settling, right? They've decided, the insurance companies say, listen, we are going to settle cases. There's a dollar, wrongful termination with any shred of credibility, They know they're going to get settled. It's going to get settled for a specific dollar amount. And I think that the insurance companies, and I don't know the specifics, so I'm not saying that these cases are, I'm not applying this theory to these exact cases, but I think you see now a lot of a very tort-friendly environment in the state because the insurance companies, instead of fighting these things, will just settle for $100,000, and then that's what you have attorneys out there who see the amount, who know they can get it. It's a pre-done deal, and they go for it.
Okay, so maybe attorneys are encouraging it, but my retort to that is that 2 of these people worked for the city for like 2 decades. And so they don't strike me as people who would just kind of leave arbitrarily because they thought there might be like a financial benefit. And I also think that like filing these lawsuits, even if, there's a history of them being settled and them working out positively in a financial manner, it's still a lot to go through publicly. to kind of put your work life out there and how it ended and have it be in the press. I don't think it's a very enjoyable experience. And so I don't know if I fully agree with that as like a motive.
So, hey, we can always disagree here, but
Yeah.
it is a trend though, and that's certainly something that's happening in the city hall now. We've seen multiple lawsuits now against.
Yeah.
And was this Robin, when you were there? I mean, I know there's the attorney general investigation. But besides that, did you get the same volume of lawsuits that you're feeling now?
No, okay. So I worked with 7 unions in the Department of Public Safety. I didn't even have as much as a grievance from one of the unions. I mean, there was no lawsuits, zero, none, nothing at all. So this is definitely not normal at all. Like at all, not normal.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And also it would be incredibly stressful. I mean, I'm sure it's incredibly stressful for Commissioner Moran to be going through this. And, when you're looking at this job that you're doing and it's like, it's all consuming. I mean, it really takes over your life when you're on the city council. You can't just do it like halfway. When you're in it, you're all in. And so it's kind of this 24/7 grind. You're making $220 a week. Then you got multiple lawsuits you're having to deal with. I mean, at some point if it were me, at some point I'd be like, the risk reward here is not working in my favor. I mean, how much grief do you really want to put up with?
Do you ever feel like the commissioners before the invention of the cell phone really had it made? Because at least when they went home at night, they went home at night.
Dude, hells to the yes. Being in public office before social media and cell phones, I mean, those guys had it made. That was like easy street,
Yeah. Now it's and I felt a little bit that campaigning of, even when you're campaigning for office, it's just at any time of the day or night, somebody could hit you with something slanderous. There could be an article written, and it just boop. Once it hits the intraweb there, it's out there, and it gets redistributed, and there, if you're not, if you're not on top of everything, you could get buried quickly.
Well, and also people want things now, right now. Like everyone's used to this, like get the information within 10 seconds kind of culture we're in. And, so something happens overnight, they want their representatives to respond to it like in the moment. I mean, you're never not on call. It's crazy, and it's not healthy. And certainly we've seen how much disinformation can be spread that way, when there was that assassination attempt against Donald Trump. I remember for the first hour or two, there was a picture of a guy going around everywhere as the alleged suspect, who was like an Italian sports commentator who had nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
But social media got a hold of it, and it's for an hour or two, everybody thought that's who the shooter was. The poor guys in Italy being like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
Anyway.
I remember back when you were commissioner, and it was a crazy time, right? It was COVID, it was the murder of George Floyd, and it was a lot of social unrest in Saratoga, and it was like a rumor spread that gangs were coming in to rape girls in hotel rooms, and it's like, what the F? But hey,
I remember making one social media post that I thought was pretty benign and informational, and the next thing I knew, it had gone completely viral and was being quoted in the New York Post. It was an insane time. It was an insane time. Speaking of the subject of lawsuits and I guess just general conflict, I saw yesterday, and I'm curious if you saw this. So the New Year's Eve fest in Saratoga Springs, it used to be run by Saratoga Arts for years and years, and then 2 years ago, it was taken over by Robert Millis, who's been on this podcast a time or two. And he has kind of done it, and he got the city to sign on as a sponsor. And in my estimation, I thought he did a really good job the last 2 years. It seemed like it was a real success. People really enjoyed it. But I saw on social media yesterday that on his kind of official New Year's Eve page that the event had been canceled because it had kind of been taken over, or the idea has been stolen by the Chamber of Commerce and other groups, and his involvement has been cut out.
Yeah, that kind of came out of nowhere. I mean,
Yeah.
Bob's been on the show before. I have a kind of a love-hate relationship with Bob because I think everybody like us are kind of local political news junkies. We all run in our same little circles and echo chambers and know each other and depending on what side of the political spectrum you're on, you have your bumps but Bob did something. Bob blasted me all over social media at one point personally for something really silly for a political stance I'd taken. So I'm not the biggest Bob fan, but I don't know how he landed that job. That was a big job, but we've talked about it. I thought it was with his resume, I don't think he should have been there, but he did a great job, and I will give him that. Personal feelings aside, I thought the last 2 years he did a really good job with New Year's Eve Fest. I think the Chamber and Discover Saratoga, and UPH, it sounds like the 3-year Universal Preservation Hall, who's connected to Proctor's. These are the crews who are taking it over, and they're certainly capable of doing it. On paper, again, it makes more sense to have them do it, but just from a grassroots, he did it for 2 years. He did a great job. I'm sorry to see Bob lose it because it was really a good event for this city.
I know. And I'm kind of it feels like there's like more to this story. And I'm kind of curious to see what that more is going to be.
Yeah. I've been shaking the trees a little bit and you're absolutely right. There's a lot I think that went on behind the scenes here that may or may not ever come out. I imagine it will, because if you follow social media, Bob's pretty vocal on social media and he's pretty vocally upset about this. So I would imagine that there will be some mudslinging and we'll see if these are local heavyweights, the Chamber of Commerce. I mean, your father-in-law is I don't know, famous enough, but very well known in this city. The Dalton name is for running the Chamber of Commerce and running it very well. As long as he did, he made a lot of friends doing that. And Discover Saratoga and UPA. These are all very big institutions. So they might just take this ball and run with it, and little old Bob gets left behind. But we'll see.
Speaking of my father-in-law, I was having brunch with them this weekend, and I was like, Joe, I think it's time for you to come back. I'm like, I want you back, and I want you on the city council. How about that? It's time for you to start running everything again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you knew Robin Dalton, my father, who goes way back in the city too, always had great things to say about your father-in-law. So, yeah, Joe, come back out. Hey, he's going to be our first pick for City Hall.
Right?
He's going to be on that list.
Yeah.
He's my nomination.
And his response to me is always the same, which is like, over my dead body. But, a girl can hope.
Yeah.
So I want to transition here quickly because we have a special guest coming on, and she has a podcast that we think is great and want to talk about. So hold on one quick sec. Let me bring her in. Hi, Dr. Decker. How are you?
I'm good. Can you all hear me?
We can. So
Yeah,
this is do you go by Dr. Alexander Decker?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So this is Dr. Christine Alexander Decker, who is one of the 3 co-hosts of the podcast Health, History, and Horses. And we connected and got to talking. And I thought what you're doing with your podcast and the concept was so cool that we wanted to bring you on and chat about it. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yes, this was a brainchild that I came up with a few years ago. So I'll give you the background. So I'm an endocrinologist. I work for Saratoga Hospital. I'm a born and bred native of Saratoga Springs. I love this city. And so I was at a women's leadership conference, and, I'm about, I don't want to say halfway through my medical profession, but kind of halfway through my medical career, and wanted to do something was a little out of the normal day-to-day what I do. And there were fantastic examples of women all around the country and the world that are doing some really unique things that use their medical talents and other things. So, and podcast came up, and since I'm from Saratoga, that slogan, we all know about it. It's everywhere. It's plastered on t-shirts. It's plastered on the signs in the city. So, and I started looking, and there was nothing. Nobody was talking about it. And so I pitched it to Charlie Kenzel, who was then the president of the Saratoga Springs History Museum and a friend. He's a native of Saratoga too. And he and I kind of ran with it. And it started right before COVID. Bad timing, but so we started doing this right before COVID. And it's just a chit chat and a sit around of three people now. It really started with Charlie Kenzel and myself and Dave Patterson, who was also the former president of the Saratoga History Museum and my favorite teacher in the high school of all time.
I think everyone's favorite teacher. He is beloved.
So, and they both had a second career as the historians of Saratoga, giving the tours for 20 something years. So it was perfectly set up. And so we started sitting around the table, and I'm the health piece. I'm health, and Charlie was history, and Dave was history. And then we kind of brought the horses thing in. But it has enveloped to I'm still the health piece, and Charlie is the history piece. And now Brian Boyer, who is the communications director at the National Museum of Racing, is the horse piece. And his parts are kind of my favorite. I just love listening to what he has to say. But so we get together periodically. We're trying to do it, every couple months, and we talk together about anything. So I start with my health topic, and he morphs, and Charlie morphs into history, and then Brian picks up horses, and somehow it all molds together. They originally lived, and again, because I'm not too tech savvy, I do medicine. I'm not really a production artist here. So they used to live on the Saratoga History Museum website, and they were completely audio. They're about 35 minutes of just education on all three topics. But then we crashed that website with the documents. So Chad Beatty from Saratoga Today and I had a conversation. And we had a few live sessions with Saratoga Digital and Saratoga Today. So on their website is the entire spectrum of the Health History Horses podcast, both audio and video. So the most recent episode we had, I talked about, and it was 2 days before the Saratoga meet started. So it's on the website. It's very contemporary. I talked about going through the aisles of CVS pharmacy and what you really need to cure a headache, and what do you want to do to take cold medicine, and what do you want to do if you have knee pain. So it was my tour through the pharmacy. I've done a lot of endocrine topics, believe me, and I think people are pretty sick of all those, because that's
I love the tour through the pharmacy. I want to take you with me to Walgreens and walk the aisles.
Yeah. So Charlie was next to me. He goes, "I'm writing all this down, Christine. I'm taking notes so I know what to take." But yeah, you go in there and you're all the colors and all the bottles. And do I buy something that's generic? Do I buy something that's brand name? So I literally went through the aisles in your mind and of CVS and Walgreens.
Hey, doctor, let me put you on the spot. Is there, Saratoga was my understanding, was once known as the number one summer destination in the world, much for our healing springs. That was before modern medicine. But is there any springs you would recommend in town? Has there been any studies, or is there actually any science behind the healing powers of our famous springs?
Scientific studies? I would say that that depending on the mineral that comes out of the specific water of that spring, there are things that have been used to treat arthritis, to treat eczema. And actually, Charlie and I went through the springs, and we categorized them, talking about the specific classical minerals from them and what you might use them for. And that's why people came to Saratoga. They came for the water. Awesome. It was the queen of the spas. So one of the episodes, I can't remember which one, but we went through the spas, the springs individually, and some of them are stinky. You're not going to really want to get at them. And some of them are the polarized water. So, but yeah, there is a little science. That's what they came for. That's, people felt better. That's Sir William Johnson, when he got injured and the Indians brought him to Saratoga, they used the waters to heal, and he didn't die from his injury. That's where Saratoga came from.
Wait, I have to say that was a great question, Adam. And that's so fascinating to me. Now, I always thought the stinkier the water, probably the better it was for me.
The stinkier the water, the harder it is to get to your nose, clearly. But
Right.
it really just depends on the mineral content. And Charlie, who's a water expert, knows everything about every spring. But we went through them. The red spring is red because it has a lot of iron, and iron is important for. Is an important molecule we use in hemoglobin for oxygen carrying capacity. So there's really some science to this. So.
That is so cool. And I actually think it's one of the things that the city we've kind of like fallen down on. We've stopped talking about our water in a way that really like reaches people. And I just think it would be so cool for like that, all the information you're describing and how you're describing it. So for somebody who's got like a headache, you know what I mean? They'll maybe go get the water at this spring. I just really wish we would kind of like refocus ourselves on that, because I think it's a part of Saratoga that we've kind of stopped celebrating in a way.
It is, because the springs are actually dying off. There used to be hundreds of them. Now there's a solid 26. I think I have that number right. I'm not certain, but and they're not really near each other as much as they used to be. But yeah, people came for the water. It wasn't the horses. They came for the water. It was the #1 tourist destination in the 1800s. We had the largest hotels, the most hotel rooms in the entire world. Some of the history stuff that Charlie talks about is fascinating. You can't even imagine. You walk down Broadway and you go, okay, the end of this hotel doesn't end. The corner of this hotel doesn't end until you're all the way to the next, block. It's phenomenal to understand. So.
But it's such an interesting, I just love the concept of this podcast, because as we just discussed, Adam asked a question about the water, and it goes into all kind of 3 categories, right away when you start talking about it. There's the health, history, and horse component to almost to everything in such kind of an unexpected and interesting way.
So I had one of the horses. I did one of the horse podcasts, and I actually interviewed a veterinarian, and we talked about horses and what are ailments that horses get that that you would want the lay public to know about. So that was fun. I've interviewed some of my colleagues in their medical professions, and we've talked about women's menopause. We talked about men's health. We've talked about orthopedics. So.
That is so great. And Brian is wonderful and just such a wealth of knowledge when it comes to the racing industry. I mean, I don't know anybody who knows more than he does,
I don't think anybody is. I mean, the statistics he comes off with and the history that he knows I learn something every single time. And again, if I'll have a plug for both museums. If you haven't been to the History Museum or the National Museum of Racing, it is a must see. What a jewel we have in Saratoga, both of those.
Couldn't agree more. So are there any upcoming episodes or upcoming topics that you're looking forward to discussing with the 3 of you?
I can't say yes, because we do this on the fly. And we just had an episode a couple of weeks ago, and we'll probably have another one after Labor Day, after the meet, and Brian will, give us the whole recap of the meet, which would be very, very exciting. Charlie, again, it has new exhibits coming into the History Museum all the time. I usually like to do some contemporary topics in medicine that maybe hitting the media that people are talking about. Of course, I've done episodes on weight loss medications and diabetes. So, And some of the live episodes that we did, the in-person ones, we were on the road too. We were at the History Museum. We were at the Racing Museum. So the live ones, you can actually see some of the scenes that we talk about.
That is fantastic. And oh my gosh.
All of our content, sorry to interrupt you, but all of our content right now lives on the Saratoga Today newspaper website. I provide them with the audio files, and they load them, and they're all described, and there's about 20 episodes. There's a good amount of material to listen to.
That's fantastic. I'm as someone who knew nothing about how much effort and work actually does go into a podcast, it's so much actually harder, I think, than people realize. And so starting it and sticking with it, I'm always really impressed when people have the commitment to follow through and continue going, continue doing it, because it's not easy. And so that's awesome that you've gotten so much content in already, and are going to continue to do it. And everybody who's listening, go over to Saratoga Today. It's SaratogaTodayNewspaper.com, I think, is the URL.
Yep.
so they can listen to past episodes and previous episodes. Because it also sounds like everything you're talking about, I mean, some of them may be timely in terms of like, you know, in the media, if there's a health issue, but it seems like you're talking about stuff that could be talked about at any time. It's not like the context of what's happening in the moment isn't necessarily relevant. So they probably hold up to listening to at any point.
Yep. And again, you know, I kind of pick a topic. And some of them, again, were really contemporaneous with the whole weight loss medication thing. I had to talk about that. I mean, that's what I do too. But listen, in fall, we've had fall episodes, and I talked about falls, and I talked about osteoporosis and postmenopausal fractures. So,
if Adam wasn't here, I would totally co-op this interview and ask you like 800 questions about like Ozempic and what Wegovy and all these things, because it has been a whatever. It's fascinating.
You know what's funny is I was thinking this, you should literally do a episode for men, because I this could be, I have no idea. I know it's going to happen sooner or later to my wife. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what I should be doing. So that would be actually something that even men would be interested in, because who knows? I mean, I couldn't even tell you what age this happens in women, and we don't discuss it now, but my goodness.
There are several episodes for you to listen to, Adam, then.
yeah. As a happily married man, I would love to support my wife and in this journey.
Are we talking about weight loss or menopausal stuff?
What's that?
Wait, are we talking about menopausal issues? Or
yes. You know, Kasha, sooner or later, as far as I know, it happens to y'all, right? And so it's nobody it skips it. So as a husband, I want to be supportive. I just don't really know what it means or what I can do to support her. So I'm gonna hop over there and check out that episode.
I tell all my women, again, if you live long, everybody goes through menopause. Whether you're a bum on the street or the Queen of England, you can't avoid it. Sorry.
Oh God, I had planned on having babies forever. I don't know what you're talking about. My womb is just eternally young. Okay. Adam, I love that. Adam, I always describe Adam as like an evolved male. He's very evolved. And so I love that you would want to go and educate yourself in that and support your wife.
Yes.
That's lovely. That's a lovely sentiment, Adam. I appreciate that. Well, Dr. Alexander Decker, we have loved having you on and would love to have you on any other time, before or after you do your next episode. And just want to push all of our viewers over to check out the podcast.
Thank you so much. Yes, when we come up with our next idea, I'll give you a holler and give you a preview.
Awesome. We would love that. And if we have any health history or horses questions, we may be coming to you guys, because I certainly don't have any of those answers myself.
You come right to the experts.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Oh, our pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
She had great energy, huh?
I know. Such great energy. And also, isn't it such a good concept for a podcast?
Yeah.
I know. I was like, that's
immediate couple things, like, boy, I would actually be interested in learning about that. So
anyway, I thought you were going to ask about weight loss drugs in men. And I was like, that's actually like a fascinating conversation too, because I feel like it's mostly like women who you see using all these weight loss drugs. And I think it's been really effective for a lot of people. And I don't know. Again, like I said, I could co-op this whole show and just talk about like weight loss. I'm an American woman. This is what we do. But everybody should check it out, because as you just saw, Christine has fantastic energy, is super smart, and the stuff they're talking about is really interesting. So I'm glad she was able to join us. In other news, Adam, I got to talk to you about my neighborhood.
Yeah, Caroline Street, huh?
Caroline Street, man. There are changes coming, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, and I got to get your opinion. So for those who don't know, Caroline Street, between Henry and Maple, where Hamlin Ghost is, where Sperry's is, that side of the street. There was a fire 8 years ago that burned down one of the buildings there. And it's been sitting as a vacant lot for the last 8 years with no development or anything. And which is just generally speaking, I think a shitty look. I think as a city, we don't want vacant lots sitting around, especially in our downtown. This one has like a chain link fence and a padlock on the outside. There's trash in the inside. It's just like not a great look. And then of course, Sperry's closed, over a year ago, I believe. And so that block has been concerning to me, because, you just have this huge stretch of a closed business and a vacant lot. So now the owner of Nove, Lou, I believe his name is is proposing a building that he would build on the vacant lot that I actually thought the rendering looked really nice. But then I guess he's expanded it. He's expanded what he initially wanted to do, and it would be like six stories high. I think there would be 42 apartment units, and then there would be retail on the bottom. And so I was happy to see it being proposed because, again, I think this vacant lot, like it's no good. We need a building there. I'm interested to see if there's a real desire for people who want to live on that block of Caroline Street, because, as you know, it would be super duper noisy and very busy to live right there in the summer. And I mean, you'd really have like all the partying and live music like in your bedroom with you. So I'm curious to see if there's a market for that. But I don't know. Generally speaking, I'm happy that it's being proposed. What do you think?
Yeah, you have with development and the city, you kind of have this internal battle between density, size of the project, and what will fit into the proposed footprint of where the building's going. And you know what I mean by that is, for instance, we only have fire trucks that can go up so high, right? So
right.
we can't have 7-story buildings, because if there was a fire, the people on the 7th floor would be out of luck.
Exactly.
So I will say it is that's a very large building for that area. I'm blessed with a family of artists who can look at architecture and conceptualize and I don't have that ability. I'm an analytical guy. I'm a numbers guy. I'm like, okay, building, good. So I guess one thing we do have in this city is we do have a lot of smart people doing a lot of planning, and there's review boards, and there's preservation foundation, and there's different groups and organizations that are really good at this stuff and what they do. And so I tend to default to them, and they have some issues with these buildings. I think being a little bland. There's not a lot of character. I know where Deandra's Pizza and Union Coach Works is.
So this is my next kind of thing.
Segue into that. Yeah. So
across the street, basically, there's a developer that I think it's under contract at the moment, who is going to be redeveloping 2 parcels where DeAndre's Pizza is on the corner of Caroline Street, and then also where Union Coach Works is, which is next to Clancy's, and it's an auto body shop. And they're proposing a huge building to go there that would, again, be condos and then retail on the bottom. Now, I live 1 block up the street from there. My problem with this is that my kids walk down to DeAndre's all the time for pizza. Right? They walk down in the afternoon after school. They walk down in the evening to get a slice. They hang out there. I feel comfortable with them being there. The owner, Rory, is a doll, an absolute doll. And I never have to kind of worry about my kids being there. And then Union Coach Works and Bert, who owns Union Coach Works, I swear to God, he has saved me from car issues so many times I can't even begin. Every time we have an issue with either one of our cars, we are right at Bert's. He's such an amazing mechanic. He's just incredible. And so they're really a big part of our little neighborhood community. And to lose them both is going to be such a bummer just for us personally. But I mean, great for them financially if they want to retire, if they're making a lot of money off this.
Well, do they own the property? I don't know. Do they own the properties? Does Deandra own
I believe they do both.
Okay, good. Because Deandra it's synonymous with Saratoga. I've been getting pizza there, and it's great because it's a unique pizza. It's not a traditional pizza, and people love it. Some people don't like it, but it's very unique. It's very, the owner is he is an absolute character. I just know him from social media, but I love watching him on social media. And so the last thing, the first thing we agree on is, boy, I hope they're not getting forced out, right? I hope if something happens. They're not. Yeah.
I think this is could be a very financially positive thing for both of them.
Yeah.
But the problem is when these big new buildings are built, they're super expensive, right? And so the owners have to charge a really high price to lease out the retail spaces in the bottom. So what I see over and over again is that then the businesses that go into the bottom of these buildings are really tourist-facing businesses. They're not resident-facing businesses. And so that's where I start getting concerned, because you take away these two things in our little neck of the woods that are so important in our day-to-day life, and then you replace them with the building and a retail location that is likely not going to be useful in terms of
You're
like,
not going to know, you're not going to know the shop owner's name.
no,
It's going to,
yeah,
it's going to be,
and
I
so
agree. That was one, a lot of people know my wife is Polish. We go to Poland every year. It seems like every corner has a market you pick up your eggs, your bread. It's the owner, and the owner's the grandma makes some chickens that, some fried
right.
chicken that you could buy. And it's the same people, the same family who run these little markets, and it's great. And it's kind of that same idea. You're going to lose that for a sterile commercial corporation. Now, we don't know this for sure, but this seems to be the trend in how these things progress.
I know, like Mittler's, for example, opening, I think is like the greatest thing since sliced bread, because I'm from New York City. I love a bodega, right? I mean, I think they're like, I would like to have a little corner store on every single like block.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't been to Miller's, but that's what it is, right?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's literally like a little convenience store downtown that has like all of your kind of
Family
immediate
run.
needs. Like they have everything from like extension cords and duct tape to red Solo cups and breakfast sandwiches and a candy wall and chip. It's a great spot. And my kids also love going there. But that's the kind of thing that I like seeing, come to downtown, but is the first kind of store we've seen like that that's really resident facing in a long time. And then also you have Gaffney's and Saratoga City Tavern. City Tavern has always kind of, I think, been open to selling, but they've officially listed the Saratoga City Tavern for sale. And then Gaffney's, as we know, is somewhere in the state of foreclosing because they defaulted on their payments to the former owner. So it's just in general a lot of change coming to this street. That's really the heart of our downtown like bar and nightlife scene. And I'm not sure people are kind of aware of how different it could look down here a year or two from now.
Yeah, I remember as a kid growing up that the City Tavern was an abandoned building for a long time.
Wow, really?
Yeah, yep. I remember they had paper over the windows downstairs, and it just was abandoned.
Jeez.
And so yeah, and good for that. That was spent a lot of time there in my youth. But yeah, there's a lot of change coming. I don't particularly love the direction that Caroline Street took. It kind of turned into Club Caroline Street with booming basses and I think Gaffney's had a lot to do with that. I'd like to see the old Gaffney cover bands, and that was a little more my style. So we'll see because it does the whole vibe of Caroline Street could change dramatically with these two. I mean, dramatically with these two properties changing hands. So we'll have to see what happens.
And it's so funny because like you loved the like live music cover bands of Gaffney's. I loved the new Gaffney's music because I'm like a rap hip hop girl. And I always thought it was kind of, I mean, we know how people can stereotype and say that, if they're playing rap at Gaffney's, we're getting like an unsavory crowd coming. And I'm thinking to myself, you're getting like a 40-year-old white woman who's coming, who's very excited. So I think sometimes people misunderstand who listens to rap music. But anyway, that aside, it makes me nervous for our little downtown,
Yeah.
and it especially where I live, and it just makes me concerned. I've also noticed, track season is well underway. It has not seemed as busy. I haven't felt the like downtown nightlife busyness, energy that I used to feel in previous track seasons. It felt quieter just in general. And that's just, again, a pure anecdotal observation living where I live. Have you been to the track, Adam? Has it been, what's it been like?
I haven't been to the track yet. And it's amazing I haven't because I love the track. I love everything about the track. I think there's a number of factors at play. Getting older, my kids are the age where it's like, and we have kids similar age now. It's like kids have 1,800 places to be and zero ability to get themselves to or from it unless they can walk or ride a bike there. But Dan and I have talked about this, and I chalk it up to this. two things. One, you had the Belmont, which kind of screwed it. Just it's like you started your track juices flowing, but then and then just the way the track fell in the calendar year. I think the opening day was July 6th. It just opened so early. Your track kind of felt like the cap of the summer. The track came. You almost felt like you were headed into fall. Where this track season, it just happened so early in the summer. It didn't. And I don't know if that feeling will change. I mean, I have that feeling too, and I really think it's just how early the Belmont mixed in with the track. Now, I did hear rumors, and these are just rumors, that next year they might just run straight through Belmont.
Wow.
So we'll have to see. I mean, it wasn't not a qualified source. It was somebody who would have this rumor would have came from somewhere up top. So we'll have to see if that happens. Again, not sure how I feel about that. I really got to wrap my head around what that would mean. But that's a rumor out there.
The other thing I think that has been a bummer is like the cancellation of, remember the Hats Off Festival?
Yeah.
Like there used to be the big Hats Off. And the Chamber of Commerce canceling that, I just think was such a bummer because it really was such a fun thing that people enjoyed. The locals came downtown for it. It created a lot of like enthusiasm and excitement in like a very like pure, like Americana way. Yeah. And I think getting rid of that was a real mistake.
We should talk. Bob Miller should go after that. Throw Bobby a bone.
Bob Millis, bring back Hats Off Saratoga.
Bring back Hats Off.
Yeah.
And copyright it, get a long-term contract so they can't kick you out again, and let's bring Hats Off back.
And I remember when it was canceled, Hats Off, Todd Shimkus cited like not being able to protect people against like terrorism, like threats as like the rationale. But now we saw with the Blues Traveler concert coming here and Tim Cole as public safety commissioner, we got the public safety handled if we have a big crowd. You remember that setup, right? Yeah. So
I do, and it does seem now that we figured out a way to knock on wood. I mean, this is heaven forbid something happens. It is a concern, but you can't live in a bubble, right? You gotta take some risks. So
yeah.
Bobby Mills for Hats Off. That's what I'm gonna do. That says that.
Exactly. I can't believe you haven't been in the track yet, Adam. That actually does speak kind of volumes about.
I know it's depressing.
These damn kids, right? The damn kids.
Damn kids, soccer camps and camps and.
But if we didn't have kids, apparently we wouldn't care that much about the future of America or our country, because we wouldn't have a reason to, according to some vice presidential nominees.
Yeah, no, the family unit's important. And JD's pointing that out, that listen, we as a nation, if we're not, what was the saying? If we're not reproducing, we're losing.
But this point was bullshit. Like if I didn't have kids, I would still be just as invested in the future of America. You know what I mean? Just because I've had like successful sex 4 times doesn't mean.
I will say this. I mean, I think that's going to go down as one of the worst VP picks.
Sarah Palin style.
Yeah, exactly. I think even worse, because it was a total ego pick of, and it brought, and this is just a commentating, without supporting one candidate or the other, just calling it as we see it. The JD Vance pick was a pick of, I don't want to say a legacy pick. I think it's more somebody President Trump knew would do his bidding, who brought nothing to his campaign. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Vice President Harris counters that, right? I mean, do you have an idea? Who would you advise that she pick?
You want to do like a 5-minute like national politics talk real quick?
Sure.
Yeah. All right, cool. So first of all,
something we've never done before, but screw it. I
know
about national politics
because everyone's dying to know our opinion on national politics.
Yeah, exactly.
The JD Vance thing, I'm like, if someone compared me to Hitler like 3 years ago, to then decide to pick that person to be my vice presidential running mate and have them agree would give me such pause about that person, because clearly they have like no scruples, no values, and are willing to sell themselves out for anything, for any amount of power or exposure. Like
Yeah,
that
I will
one,
say this. I will say this. The Harris campaign should not be throwing stones about evolving positions and ideas, because apparently that's a big part of the Harris is
but I mean, to evolve from,
she was anti-fracking. She's okay with fracking now. She
but
was supportive of defund the police.
but
She's the
wait.
prosecutor now.
But she can probably articulate how she got from one position to another. And you can't compare that to saying Donald Trump is Hitler. Wait a minute. I want to be Hitler's running mate. I mean, that speaks to a totally different moral compass problem.
It is very hard to justify how you could to try to make the transition to accepting Hitler as being actually a decent person.
And then like just the stuff, I mean, literally like he came out and just everything that has come out of his mouth has been such a excuse my language, but it's just so many fuck ups, just from the, cat ladies. And I mean, like every single day on Twitter, like weird is trending because like everything he's doing is so freaking weird. I like you said, I think it's going to go down as one of the worst vice presidential picks ever. And it certainly doesn't get any new voters, in my opinion, to start.
I mean, don't get. Vice President Harris is also doing a good job of putting her, really, have you seen these Zoom calls she do? It's unbelievable. She's doing these, and it's all based on, intersectionality. Like what do you belong to? So, a gay black man Zoom call. And the funniest, or a black woman for Harris Zoom call, but the honest one was the white men for Harris.
White dudes for Harris.
Can you imagine if a Republicans did a white dude for Republicans?
I mean, that would just be stating the obvious, right?
Well,
white dudes supporting white dudes.
Queer black men for Harris is kind of stating the obvious too. No, you think they're going for Trump?
Well, she's not. Well, basically,
so black women for Harris. That's that. Right. I guess my point is she is running a campaign that's really based on I always mess this one. Intersectionality. There it is. I have it written down. I always screw that word up. But essentially, it's her campaign. She's going to have to. It's going to be the fight for the center, right? Because the left is going to vote for her, the right's going to vote for Trump, and neither of them really seem to be doing a great job of trying to capture the moderate votes, and that's who's going to swing this election.
Well, I just was having a really interesting conversation with I know someone who I know, Bruce Klyon, who I think you know from social media, who's a Saratogan. He's great. He loves talking politics. I love talking politics with him. And he was pointing out that Vice President Harris is really going to have to figure out how to talk to like the Nikki Haley voter, like the Nikki Haley supporters, and try to get them over to her, because we know the people who voted for Nikki Haley in all these state primaries refused to vote for Donald Trump. And the majority of them articulated that they wouldn't vote for Trump in the general election, even if Nikki Haley lost. So getting those people to come out and then vote for Kamala is going to be, I think, one of the things her campaign is going to be challenged with. Like, she's got to figure out how to do that.
Did you see any of the clips of like white dudes for Kamala, that phone call?
I did. I just saw the hat that I then immediately said had to do a Photoshop on Adam.
You put it, that was
Adam.
Yeah.
No, but I watched.
I watched some of it. It was not geared towards white dudes. It was white dudes, sitting around talking about how they are historically advantaged and the oppressor, and about how they cried when Donald Trump became president last time, and it wasn't really speaking to dudes. I mean, I honestly think
language.
Well, she is the big play right now is the single females. It's a huge voting bloc that votes together, that really is trending towards the Democratic Party, the Democratic votes in Kamala Harris, and we see this all over. And it's that female vote, that huge block that's just turning into a force right now. That's kind of, if you get the white dudes, if you have some white dudes, to bolster them up, then they're gonna be. It's just, that's who I think that white dude, that call was playing to, because, or I don't know. As a white dude, I watched that. It made me less want to vote for her than
so really
in.
for me, if someone is describing a group of people as white dudes or they're self-identifying as white dudes, I'm going to expect them to not talk about feelings, to not talk about kind of like I'm picturing like bar talk, like we're having like a Bud Light and talk, like that's kind of what I'm anticipating.
Maybe Coors Light.
Coors Light. Sorry, my bad.
That was a little play on the whole Bud Light Dylan.
Oh, right. Anyway. But that would be kind of like the level of conversation I would expect. And so I guess what you're saying is that's not what you were hearing. And so that was
no, it was about your feelings and about how you
know that white dudes don't talk about feelings.
Come on, oppressing somebody. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it was not bringing in white dudes. It was not bringing in the Nikki Haley voter. And I think I can greatly sympathize with the Nikki Haley voter. And so again, it's going to be, I understand you got to keep the base fired up, but these candidates are firing up their bases with JD Vance picks and white dude calls and feelings. But it's okay. Who's going to talk to the guy who wants to make, who cares about other people, but wants to make sure his family's fed and the border secure and that democracy, you're not putting in somebody who's going to not leave the office.
Well, unfortunately, I think everybody agrees that all those things are really important, except for the Trump supporters who don't agree with the democracy piece, which is just bizarre to me. But I don't think that JD Vance is doing a good job at rallying the base. I think they're concerned about him. I don't think he's I don't think
he rallies the diehard MAGA base. But yeah, you're right. There's absolutely buyer's remorse, I think, coming out of the Trump camp. I think that was a pick when Biden was in the race, that Trump was, he was walking away with the swing states. Again, it's going to be interesting to see who Vice President Harris picks. I'd like you to see her pick. I'd like her to pick, again, going back to the Jewish part of me here. I'd like her to see Shapiro from Pennsylvania. But honestly, and a lot of people, I think that the Democratic Party has a problem with Jews right now. And I think there's a big anti-Semitic part of that party. And yes, people say, well, she's married to a Jew. True. But I think
I didn't even know that. Is that bad?
What's that? I
didn't know that. Is that bad?
No. But it's like it's like, hey, I'm not racist. I have a black friend.
Right.
Now, again, having a black friend and having a black spouse is different.
Right.
But I one thing I see with my religion, I think
you're right.
Extreme politics on the left and the right is a religion, and religions can be mutually exclusive. And I think you have Jews who pick their far left religion over their Judaism, and you see this, and it's not mainstream, but you have, but it's certainly not the fringe. You have a lot of Jews who are really grappling with these, communism, and I know this because my wife grew up in communism. Communism, the religion is the state, is the government. There's no religion. Right. And that's kind of like that's the knock against the far left and socialism, is that that's really communism. And the religion is not the religion. The religion is the state and the government. So I think just the fact that Kamala has a Jewish husband is not a free path, is for her to write off Israel. But anyway, I think we've delved into national politics enough in this.
I know. Obviously, I'm a big Vice President Harris supporter. I can't wait to vote for Kamala. And I can't actually believe how much calmer I feel now that she's the nominee, even though I was like ride or die for Joe Biden. So thank you, Joe Biden, for putting the country ahead of yourself and helping my mental health a little bit. I appreciate it. And in the meantime, we will be back.
She fired up the base. She did do that. Boy, it's a whole different race now.
The Atlanta rally they had last night was electric.
A lot of people, a lot of money, a lot of volunteers. So
yeah. We will be back. There's a city council meeting on August 6th. That's the next one. So we will be back to do a pod the day after and do a recap. And we look forward to seeing you guys back then. You can find us on YouTube, all the social channels, wherever you watch podcasts, Spotify, Apple. Go like, follow, share, and thank you for joining us today.
Stay charming, Saratoga.